everyone, welcome to the Movie Substance Show. My name is Fariba, and today I wanted to do a movie review on a Bollywood film, Pathaan, which actually came out a couple weeks ago. It's been one of the most talked about movies this year so far. I mean, it's already been breaking records, so why not just talk about it, right? And I don't typically do a lot of Bollywood movie reviews in general because I don't watch a lot of Bollywood movies, at least not in the rate that I used to watch them, like I used to back in the days. But I had one subscriber request that I do a movie review for at least some Bollywood films, and I thought, why not do one for Pathaan? So this is for you, Sachin. Doing this movie for you, so I hope you do enjoy it. But yeah, so let's talk about Pathaan. This is the newest film that came out. It's only been February, and it's already become the biggest film of not just the year, but probably around probably the whole decade already, funny enough. But yeah, this film stars Shah Rukh Khan, Deepika Padukone, and John Abraham. And of course, the first name might sound really familiar. Shah Rukh Khan, he is known as one of the biggest Indian Bollywood actors out there. His name is so recognizable that there's just, if someone mentions that name, they'll only think about the good stuff about it, unless there's some other things. But aside from that, he is one of the biggest Indian stars out there. I would even mention his name to some of my non-Bollywood, friends out there, and they'll probably know Shah Rukh Khan as he is one of the most well-known, most recognized actors out there. And yeah, to see him in this type of film, it's really exciting. But of course, when we are looking to this film and just the whole background of it and what this actually means for Shah Rukh Khan, it's a really important thing for Shah Rukh Khan. So for those who don't know, as much as the fact that he is one of the biggest stars out there, let's just also talk about the fact that he's also had some really big bumps on his road. And let's just say the last 5 to maybe 6 years haven't been the greatest for him. Some of his last few films that he had done weren't the biggest hits. They weren't really doing well commercially nor critically. They just haven't been really working out. There was this slump that he was dealing with for a while, and because of that, he took a break. He took a break from acting. He took a break from movies. It wasn't until recently, I think even last year, he did a couple of films, but this is his first leading role in a long time. And so this was a film that everyone's saying, well, this is the comeback for Shah Rukh Khan. This means a lot for him. This is going to be a big testament of whether or not he succeeds in his comeback. This was really what was going all about. And the matter is that this is a big film that's really important to him. Can he really succeed in what he needs to do to really just revamp for everything that happened before and become the big star he once was? So in terms of what this film is, right, of course, as I mentioned before, this is a much different film than Shah Rukh Khan typically does. Because when we look at Shah Rukh Khan and his films and the things that he does, right, he's usually known as doing a lot of romantic films, a lot of romantic roles. He's either playing a Raj or Rahul, and in somewhere, some form, he is somehow able to steal the hearts of so many people, whether it be the ladies or the guys. Everyone loves him when it comes to all these romance films. He somehow is able to really just exude this magic, this charm that he always has in the roles that he takes, especially any of the romantic ones, and showing just the beauty of falling in love on the big screen, whether that's the actual film, the main premise of the film itself, or even just a small bit of it. And so of course it's a really big deviation from what Shah Rukh Khan typically does. And I'm not saying that he's never ever done an action film or actually ever perform action scenes. He has. I think the one that really sticks out is Mehuna, where he had a lot of action scenes in that film. I don't know if that would be deemed an action film. I think that was more of a drama anyways, but that was probably, I think, just about the level of action that we've seen Shah Rukh Khan before. But this is the first one where we actually see Shah Rukh Khan doing far more action before. The main premise of this whole situation, the whole genre of it, is action. This is what it is. He is the action hero now. He is not the romantic hero that we saw in movies like Diwali Duhaniya Le Jayenge, Kuch Kuch Hota Hai. No, he's not playing any of those films, right? In this film, it is strictly action based. It is what it is. This is what the whole idea is. That's what the whole ambience of this film is. And so what does this mean? Can Shah Rukh Khan actually show and prove that he can be an action hero, just as the fact that he can be a romantic hero? And in this case, I think he does. So in terms of what this film is about, it is going back into sort of a bit of patriotism. A lot of Indian films are based upon patriotism, so there's going to be a lot of military base types. This film was about far more into spyware. espionage. So this is what this film was really catered towards. Like, this is how it sets up the things. John Abraham plays the villain, whereas Deepika Padukone plays a bit of like this deceptive spy herself. So that's what this whole film is. It really has a bit of the spy thing going on, especially, and it also goes into a bit more of this conflict between India and Pakistan, which is a very big topic that is seen in a lot of Bollywood films. Like, the conflict between India and Pakistan is one that we always see in a lot of films. So how does this film really able to really set up the things that are going on? So in general, I think that this film, I mean, as much as the fact that I haven't been seeing a lot of Bollywood films, like, this isn't like a masala film. Like, a masala film is where you really have all these ridiculous action scenes where things just are physically, or I would say, like, in physics wise, impossible. Like, it really defies the laws of physics. Like, that's masala films. Like, we've seen these action films where, like, masala films has the action. Masala films has all the ridiculousness. It has those things where it's like, yeah, we're gonna have the romance and everything like that. But let's just do things where it's like, okay, if we're gonna have some action scenes, it's just not going to make sense. Like in the physics terms, it does not make sense. That's all I can say. But it's a fun film. Masala films are supposed to be fun, and that's what makes masala films masala films. This is not a masala film. This is a very, clear action film where it is using aspects of espionage, the tropes of it, the action scenes that we see out of it, just some of the ways that they are categorizing a lot of the characters to really set up the action of what this film is supposed to be. And so in this film, they really do set that up. Like, I think that this actually feels a far different Bollywood film than I typically would see, because again, it doesn't have all of that masala aspects to it. It is a clearly defined Bollywood film where it is taking action to a whole different level, using inspiration from Hollywood itself, and I think that that's what really helps it to make this a far more sophisticated type where it is not taking things too ridiculous, but also making sure that yes, it is a fun film, that it is trying to set up like, okay, well, if we're going to make this a action based film, let's also make sure that the action itself makes far more sense. Like, and I think that what really surprised me is that this film really felt like I was watching Mission Impossible. I think that that's where a lot of the influence was pretty clear. Like, there was even one scene where they actually go to Dubai, which I felt like, okay, this is giving me Ghost Protocol vibes. And yeah, that's really what it is. Like, I think that this is a film that really is kind of like its own Bollywood version of Mission Impossible. Like, it's pretty clear what's going on. Like, I think even with Shah Rukh Khan's character, you kind of get a little bit of Ethan Hunt vibes that's going on, just because, he is really taking his job by heart. Like, he's trying to make sure that, that he's doing his job, that he's protecting his country, that he is doing things in a way that are still within the legality of things, but also trying to make sure that, at the end of the day, no one gets hurt. Or, I mean, well, people do get hurt, but at least trying to make that, collateral damage at its bare minimum, right? And that's what we really see out of this film. Like, it felt like a Mission Impossible film. There's just no denying it. I felt that sort of energy out of it. And I think that in terms of trying to make Pathaan its own version of Mission Impossible, but also bring in its Bollywood elements, it works. And I think that a lot of that is, of course, Shah Rukh Khan. Let's just not deny that. I think that this is a film where Shah Rukh Khan is really able to be, a version of him that he's never been able to do before. I think that this is a challenge for him because he's never done an action hero before. And in this case, he still does. I think that what really helps is that he still is able to exude that charm. I think that when it comes to Shah Rukh Khan, he is able to show this charm of what he's able to do with any of his characters. And he still is able to emulate that in this film and try to make sure that it doesn't still have the, typical archetype that is the romance type, but trying to make sure this is giving you the idea that this is a action film, that this isn't a romance film. And yeah, it does have its romance elements. I think that does kind of hurt the film a little bit, where it's like, okay, well, as much as like this is an action film, yeah, there is going to be sprinkles of romance, and they kind of need it just to like make things a far more trying to make it so that's still Bollywood, because I mean, when it comes to Bollywood films, there's always going to be some sort of romance. And I mean, it's not like the Mission Impossible films don't do that either. I think the first 2 or 3 films do have like the tropes of, oh, we need to have the love interest sidekick sort of side character that we need, and they have to be there, right? In some ways, in ways I don't like how they're categorized as like damsels in distress, but And I think in this case, it doesn't really take the dental distress level to a whole horrible level. I think in this case, they actually try to make sure that Deepika's character is not falling in that sort of type where she is a dental distress. She is not. In any case, she actually does do a lot of things in the film where she's the one saving Shah Rukh Khan's character. So I think that in this case, I do appreciate how they're trying not to make things a bit too stereotypical, a bit too archetypical in terms of how they're trying to categorize some of the characters, even as this being a action film. So I'll at least compliment that for one thing, right? But it does have its romance elements. It doesn't take away the fact that there is some romance in this film. It does play a role in what's going on with Shah Rukh Khan's character, which is Pathaan, the title of what this whole film is about. But yeah, and that being the case, right? Like, this is a film again where I do see Shah Rukh Khan really just showing the energy that he is able to exude as an action hero. He really does that. He exudes the charm. He exudes just this energy. He shows the sophistication. He shows the fact that he is someone who needs to be taken seriously. He is a very, he's known for his craft. He's able to really show that he is a very dangerous spy that you shouldn't take for granted or that you shouldn't underestimate. And I think that he is able to show that type of character in this film where, like, in terms of like setting up the character, he is able to succeed and really just displaying what it needs to be done to show who this character is, and not making sure and just trying to make sure that this character isn't less of what he's supposed to be. Now, in terms of like some of the characterization like working out for a long run, and yeah, I think that John Abraham, like, it's not the first time he's ever played a baddie in a film. He's actually played villains before, of course, if you think about Doom. But in this film, I think he really does a good job of playing a villain as well. Like, he does give this essence of like, wow, this is a vengeful villain who really wants to destroy this country for just the betrayal of what happened, right? And I think that the whole concept of it is a really big deal. I think that needs to be really just discussed about, because when we are looking at action films, of course, like, there are going to be like real life aspects that they need to use to really just set up the things and kind of give it its energy, as well as giving something for like the audience to like, okay, well, because of this sort of concept that we have, I can understand why this is going to be an important film. I want to watch it and see how they're able to really execute it. And I think that this is a really big important part about this film, because a whole thing about what this film really tries to discuss about is patriotism and whether or not you're willing to fight for your country. This is what the whole film is about. I mean, if you're going to have a spy film, that's basically going to be a big part of what's going to be happening. Like, are you going to defend your country, or are you going to go against it? And there is, of course, the whole romance aspects of it, like someone's having a person who has their own ordeals, their own sort of goals and objective of what they need to do. And I think that that's a big case of what's going to happen in this film. And I think that with this film, like, one of the things I've seen as a big problem with a lot of other patriotic type of films is that they also take nationalism to a bit of a radical level. They really kind of take some stereotypes of what happened with some sort of character, right? Like, in a lot of cases, I do see problems where a Muslim is typically seen as the villain, whereas any other person, any non-Muslim, is shown as the hero, shown as the good guys. And I think that in this film, they don't really do that. They don't really make they don't really designate anyone as one person or one thing as clearly good or clearly bad. A whole group of people being good and a whole group of people being bad. They don't do that. There's like a little bit of a grayness I think this film really does set up, because in this film we see some people who are bad. We do see some people who are good, and that's regardless of what their nationality is. And I think that this is a film that I really appreciate how they try to make things a bit more vague, try to make things a bit more gray, that it doesn't really classify anyone in some ways as some form of a clear good person, a clear bad person. And I really appreciate that, because that's something that I've seen a lot of films really struggle, both in Hollywood and in Bollywood. And this one, they really make sure that they're not really, stereotyping anyone. In this film, they're showing that there are going to be some good apples, there are going to be some bad apples, regardless of who you are, where you come from, what your nationality is. It makes that message very, very clear. And I think that that's something that I really at least appreciate out of this film, because in sort of this messaging, because when it comes to Bollywood, there is going to be a big message, and in this case they're showing the message that, well, yeah, in one case, like, we understand what is going on. There is the whole patriotism level. People have to feel like they're they're a proud person in terms of their country, trying to defend their country, but also like there are things that because you're a part of your country doesn't mean that your country is always good. There's going to be some level of corruption. There's going to be some level of immoral things that are happening in politics, and not just politics, but also in some of the more military defense level and things that are happening. Especially, again, this is a movie that's based upon espionage, right? So they're also showing that even when it comes to like the CIA, the FBI, MI6, or the whatever 007 agent or whatever, right? Like, or IMF, right? Regardless of that, there's going to be some good people, there's going to be some bad people, and that's what we're getting out of. Like, in some cases, like, you kind of get a little bit of Skyfall vibes just because of, like, because Skyfall does the same thing, right? Like, they have De Silva. He is somebody who used to work for, I believe, was it IMF? Or no, MI6, sorry. It was MI6, and yet he became a bad person. Like, as much as the fact that he used to work for them, he became a bad person because of how they created a monster out of him. And we do see a similar case in this film where it's like the character that John Abraham character is playing, as much as the fact that he used to represent his country, he became the person he is because of the decisions, because of the corruption, the fact that they weren't even willing to defend him as an Indian, that that he's now gone a whole revenge rampage out of it. And I think that that's what this film really does a big thing about. It's just really setting up that there is no such thing as a good whole group of people. There's going to be bad apples, there's going to be good apples. There's no denying that. I appreciate the vagueness out of it, the messaging out of like, okay, well, if we're going to be patriotic, let's also call out some of the things that our government has done that are really bad. Like, I mean, I'm an American, and I'm not ever going to say that our government is perfect, right? And so that's kind of a big part of what this film really does, is that instead of just trying to, continue on with this tropes, continue on with the stereotypes, it really it does things where it starts to be a bit more vague. And I really appreciate that, just having a bit more of that grayness. And I think that that's where at least I appreciate how they execute, sort of just trying to set up not just the idea, but the story and the characters of that. And I think that's one thing I really like about this film, is that it doesn't really do too bad in terms of doing that. Now, in terms of the action scenes, I mean, the action scenes are pretty solid. I mean, we're seeing Shah Rukh Khan just being a badass as usual. I think that, again, a lot of the action scenes I do see in this film, like, I can see the influence of Mission Impossible, James Bond. I guess you can say a little bit of Indiana Jones here and there, but this is a film where it really does take a lot of influence from a lot of these spy films and puts it into this one, and doing so in a way that it still has its own Bollywood aspect. Like, aside from the fact that this isn't a masala film, it does have some of the more typical ridiculous, like, here and there'll be sprinkles of ridiculous Bollywood action scenes that, of course, won't make any sense in the laws of physics, but I think that's still a lot of fun in terms of just making this a really fun film. And again, like, it really does it does everything it can to really make sure that the characters are the stars. Of course, making sure that Shah Rukh Khan is the big star out of this, but also, again, trying to make sure that story itself is not setting up itself in a way that it's too radical, but also, again, trying to be a bit more central in its messaging, and showing again that just because of where you come from, what you are, what happens, right, that doesn't define who you are, right? It depends on how you exude sort of that energy into your work, and what you're going to do, and the extent that you're going to go through to make sure that things work out, and also doing so in a way that seems moral, that seems good, that seems I mean, yeah, it just seems like as if you're making something that you're doing something where it's like the messaging is okay, right? And I think that's something that I will appreciate with this film. Now, in terms of just the overall aesthetic of it, I think, again, there are some pacing issues here and there. But, like, I felt like the final act, I would want a little bit more out of it, but it doesn't take away the fact that this is a really fun film. I think overall I did enjoy it. In terms of the songs, like, I mean, let's not forget about the songs. Like, songs are a big part. I felt like this is a film that really kind of gave back a little bit of just the energy that is the Bollywood films. Like, I feel like a lot of Bollywood films haven't really been doing so well and like really kind of fleshing out the music. Like, I think that we kind of lost a little bit of that magic we used to get in like the 1990s and 2000s, and even like early 2010s. Like, I feel like I hadn't been able to really get that, that subtle but nuanced sort of music where it isn't just item. I mean, yeah, we do have an item song, but again, trying to make sure that isn't the center of what this film is, but also kind of making sure that it is still well done in a way that it is constructed very well. And I think that this is a film where like it is far more original in sort of making up the music, and it's really it's a beat. I mean, you get a lot of beat out of it. I think it's a really great beat that we get from the two songs that we do get in this film. I think they're pretty fun, and yeah, like I mean, this is a film that I really hope that it becomes an example of how to really move on with Bollywood movies going forward. Just because again, I feel like there's a lot of that magic that has been missing in a lot of Bollywood films, and I think that this is the one where I felt like, okay, well, yeah, there are some flaws in terms of the story structure, and I think that you know there were some things I didn't really like in terms of the actual romance aspect of it in between Shah Rukh Khan and Deepika Khan's character. I feel like that kind of felt a little bit flat, and I think that they do overdo a lot of things that are happening with Deepika's character, and I feel like they need to just kind of like trim it down a little bit, just because I get it, like she is supposed to be deceptive, she's trying to do things in her ways that she can resolve her own matters, trying to make sure that she's able to succeed in her side of the goals, and I get that, and I wish that they could have at least tweaked some things out of with that, because again, there was one thing that they kind of really overdo in terms of deception of her character. But it doesn't take away the fact that this is a really fun film, that this film really does things in a way that does bring a little bit of that magic back that Bollywood has really been missing for a long, long time. And I didn't even know that this film was actually part of a connected universe, because apparently it is connected to like other films like Tiger and War, which I did not know about. So that's going to be very interesting how they're going to try and make their own cinematic universe out of that. So I'm going to keep an eye on that, of course, but aside from a couple of flaws here and there, I think that overall this is a really fun film. I think that I really enjoy how they really try to execute what it's trying to happen, and doing so in a way that's not too preachy, it's not too nationalistic, too radical in what it's trying to say, but also making sure that it is presenting a really important message in terms of what is going on, the whole idea of being proud of your nation, but also recognizing that your country is not perfect all the time, but also doing so in a way that despite what's going on, that revenge is not ever going to be the answer for anything, right? And I do appreciate how it really sets up the things, but also making sure that the action is the big thing, right? I mean, the action scenes were pretty cool. I mean, it's not like full blown or shocking or as adrenaline hyping as the way that we see in the Mission Impossible films. I think that there's no way anyone can really, emulate the way that Tom Cruise really does his action films, trying to do his stunts, and that's going to be really hard to ever really replicate by anybody. I mean, especially in Bollywood standards. But in this one, I think for what it does, I think it really sets a whole sort of level of how to really start doing Bollywood films moving on, especially trying to kind of sway away a little bit from masala and trying to be a bit more of a sophisticated action film that at least has a bit more of the action scenes that makes sense. And I think overall this is a really fun film that it was, and I mean, I'm glad that Shah Rukh Khan really succeeded in his comeback, and this is a film that I'm really proud of how it really turned out. Overall, I probably would give it like a 3.5 out of 5 stars, just because again there are some things that I wish the story could have been a bit more fleshed out, could have at least tweaked some things of how I try to execute some things, because I still think that we still have this problem with how they're really trying to categorize female characters, but I think this one does a little bit better job of how we see them in like action films. So again, hopefully we get to see a bit more of that change moving forward. Again, this is going to be part of a cinematic universe, so it seems like we're going to see Shah Rukh Khan again as Pathaan probably in the near future. But yeah, that's all I really have to say about Pathaan. I mean, if you haven't seen it, I would recommend it. I mean, I guess if you're going to get into Bollywood, pretty good start to getting into it. But yeah, that's all I have to say about Pathaan. Have you seen it? Have you not? What do you think about it so far? What are your opinions about the action films? Do you think that Shah Rukh Khan has succeeded in his comeback? What do you think about the messaging itself? Like, do you agree with the fact that this film really manages to try and not be too preachy, try to be too nationalistic in terms of like its messaging, and tries to, a bit more gray in presenting its actual message and doing so in a way that it is not too problematic? Do you agree with that? Do you not agree with that? Do you think that this film still has a little bit of a messaging issue regardless that needs to still be kind of fleshed out a little bit, needs to kind of be fixed, needs to be tweaked out as we get more and more into these films? Are you looking forward to seeing more of these films? Because apparently it is part of a bigger universe. But yeah, that's all I have to say about that. And overall, what are your thoughts so far? Are you excited for more films? Let me know in the comments down below, and make sure to like and subscribe.